Still my eyes and I will see you through on this bittersweet journey. Take my hand and I will lead you to the so-called end. Hold me tight and I'll forgive you for making me stay. Tell me lies and then I'll leave you, 'cause lies are made. You better be strong for me.
I heard his footsteps as he approached, although there was no one standing there. Well, at least there was no one standing there that could be seen by the naked eye. I bit down on my teeth when I thought about one who could see. Monroe, my Ak, my best friend, the one I had it in my heart to murder. He saw things all the time, but we never talked about it. I heard things all the time, and yet we still never talked about it. Are you going to speak to me? Is there something I should know? I asked, not looking away from the compound below me. I waited. He was always there, had been there my whole life, and have only spoke to me a few times. And most of those times had been when I had wakened alone in the desert, my last memory being running out of the lion's den intent on killing my brother. You have come a long way, he spoke. His voice was like the wind. But you still have a long way to go. Rest here for a little while. More will join you here. Then together you continue east. The muscle twitched in my jaw as I heard his footsteps begin to retreat. I had so many questions, like what happened to my family? What had happened to my brother? But I knew from experience it didn't matter what I asked him. He would only answer what was in Yah's will for me to know. Still, there was one thing. Why here? I asked, giving it a try. His footsteps stalled. She's a gift from Yah. And then he was gone. I didn't hear any more footsteps because I heard flight. My gaze was still on the compound below me. I knew who the she was he spoke of, because I have been able to think of little else during my watch. I can't remember when I had ever wanted a woman more, but I was at a loss at how to get past that iron wall she had built around herself, so that I could get to what I find myself suddenly craving. She's been hurt. That much is clear in the fact that she actually experienced pain when touched. I could hear it in her heartbeat. Except when I touched her, her heart did something different, and so did her breath. I closed my eyes, remembering that sound she made when she first saw me, and the sound she made when I touched her. I intentionally let my palm lay on her belly. I had to know. I had to know if my touch caused the same effect in her that poor sap Mitch's touch caused. And told Ayah it didn't. I hit my knees and I began to pray, having the overwhelming urge to thank the Father. I thanked him for the messenger that he sent to me. I thanked him for the time of rest he has allowed us. I prayed that the others that was to meet us here made it safely. I prayed that when we continued east, that he would bless our journey. And then I prayed for Debra. I prayed that he showed me the way. If she is a gift to me, then please, Father, show me how to help her. She has scars that ran real deep. I stayed on my knees for the better part of my watch. By the time morning came, I had my answer. I didn't bother taking off anything. By the time I made it back up to my loft, I was dog dead tired. I fell in my bed with my cargo pants on, tank top, and my boots. It had truly been a long night. After Dawid had went on his power trip and told my people that their queen now belonged to him, silly rabbit. Tricks is for kids. Anyway, after that show of You James, Me Tarzan, he instructed me to sit with my people, or more like shoved me down to sit next to the only person in the world who had been kind to me as a child, my Belle, or Mrs. Pam, which some of the other people here called her, all except her great-granddaughter. Search the place. Let us start the burn pile outside, Dawid said as another group of men came from outside and began to search the compound. I'm a man of Yah. I serve him and I follow his laws. You will also follow his laws. To choose not to do so is to choose death. I have zero tolerance for anything different. If you don't know Yah's laws, one of my people will gladly go over them with you. We're saved, my Belle whispered. Frowning, I looked at her. Tears came to her eyes as she looked at Dawid. Slowly, I turned back to him. He was taking off his long coat, revealing a pair of shoulders, big shoulders, and a big muscled chest that his black thermal shirt lay over just right. He wore a shoulder holster that held 2 guns, one under each arm. On his waist was a sword. Then my eyes fell on what had caused so much emotion in my Belle. He wore a pair of tassels. I looked around at his other men, and amazingly, they all wore tassels or fringes, all with a cord of blue. Tassels meant he was a Hebrew Israelite. I felt relief because now I know for a fact that Scott did not send him. I was floored, though. We had Hebrews here. Although technically, most of us here were Hebrews, but none of us knew how to be Hebrews. And you would think, considering the role I played in the true identity of our people being brought to light, I would have taken just a moment in time to find out what it was I had risked my life for. I shook my head. I had so much blood on my hands. I didn't want to taint something so pure. It was said that the places they stayed was not ravaged by these fierce storms or quakes. It seemed that all the plagues that were sweeping across the world just passed over them. Some folks were developing gruesome sores and tumors on their bodies from the Fukushima nuclear disaster that happened in March 2011. All the world governments hid the fact that there was no stopping the radiation that had been spilled and was slowly traveling around the world like a cloud of death. And now, it wasn't if you were going to die of radiation poison, but when. But it was said that none of the Hebrews, or those traveling with them, suffered from the effects of the radiation. And not to mention the blood fiends, or more like zombies. The drug they craved caused them to hunger for one's blood, which was where the name of the substance had come from. Not to mention it looked like actual blood. But it was said that none of those that lived or traveled with the Hebrews were affected. It was as if they were being protected by a higher power. There was no doubt about it. Whenever folks spotted those tassels, they instantly offered whatever wealth they had just to travel with them. Dawid's men were going from apartment to apartment, carrying out every statue, painting, carving, taking it all to that pile that was growing outside the building. They carried my Belle's Jesus painting out and she just watched. Why, you ask? I looked around at the 50 plus people I have looked after for the last few years, and most of them didn't even put up a fuss at the sight of their cherished items being burned. Why, you ask? Well, because they believed, like everybody else in this day did, that now that the Hebrews were here, then they were saved. And I was thinking that maybe now I can be free. They did a thorough checking of the compound. This was a really big deal to Dawid. It is of the utmost importance that you don't have any idols here. I need you to think hard. Is there any item you own that you cannot live without? He asked the group. There was nothing here that I could not walk away from. However, my eyes fell to Baxter Jr., the man whose father had held complete and utter control over me and my mind for most of my life. His eyes shifted around, looking at the men who came in and out of the stairwell, watching to see if they carried his most prized possession. Right then, his gaze became stricken. I bit my lip to keep from smiling. They had found it. Turning towards the stairwell, I nearly laughed out loud when I saw the man with the turban carrying the bust of Baxter Sr. in his hand. Now wait just a minute, Baxter said, coming to his feet, his light-skinned cheeks growing flushed in his anger. Wow, had he grown a backbone? I leaned back on the palm of my hand, crossing my feet at the ankle, getting ready to enjoy this show. Dawid, who at the time was dispatching men to take watch up on the cliffs, stopped, turning his fierce gaze onto Baxter, who instantly thought better of his outburst. I shook my head. What a damn coward. And to think, he had it in his head that he would become my husband. He was the only logical choice. I chuckled. Hell, I couldn't help it. Why are you just sitting there? He spat at me. Do something. They are taking the last image I have of father. I shook my head at this sorry man. Is there a problem? Dawid's voice was so deep. It made Baxter Jr. sound like the sniffling girl he was. Yes, I have a problem. He drew up his shoulders, working up his courage, for all it was worth. And? Dawid asked, turning to face him completely. Slowly, he walked toward him. The closer he got, the more the difference in their height and weight became apparent. Compared to Dawid, Baxter was a shrimp. His eyes widened when he saw Dawid come to stop in front of him. He had to look up, way up, to even keep eye contact. D, do something, he squeaked, looking like a mouse standing in the paws of a lion. You were saying you had a problem, Dawid reminded him, frowning so fiercely down at him. Baxter's legs just gave out as he slowly sat, keeping his eyes on him. He shook his head. No, there's no problem, he said, planting his butt back on the floor. You sure? Because I prefer to deal with this now, so that we can have you buried by morning. Baxter's eyes got wide as he shook his head. No problem. Dawid looked down at him for a moment. He said, and boy, did that speak volumes. Baxter boy better watch it. When Dawid turned back to commanding his men, Baxter looked at me, as if I had done it to him. Why did you just sit there? He mouthed. I held my head back and laughed at the fool. Goodness. When my humor had died out, I felt it. I felt his gaze on me. He stood there looking down at something one of his men was showing him, but his eyes were on me. His lids were lowered as he looked at me, his gaze going up from my boots to my legs, my chest, my neck, my face. Goodness! Would you look at the set of bedroom eyes on that one? Ma Belle said from her chair next to me. I looked at her shocked. Ma Belle, What you know about bedroom eyes? She chuckled. Well, you don't think I have had my babies the same way Mary did, do you? I shook my head. Mom Bell can be a trip sometimes. Well, I don't know nothing about his eyes, or who he looking for that matter. Look, gal, you can lie to yourself all you like. But we all seen what happened over yonder, on that wall. And, I don't know what that boy whispered in your ear. But whatever it was, it made your toes curl in your boots. My mouth fell open and she began to laugh. It surely did not, I told her. Mom Bell was 80 years old and didn't look a day over 60. You could say whatever make you feel better. But Mom Bell thinks somebody done come along that can heat you up enough to melt that ice you carry around in your heart. I looked at her. She, of all people, should know that I am broken and that my kind of damage there was no repair for. I turned around letting the topic drop. Something I didn't even care to joke about. Anyway, the idle search and destroy went on for a few more hours. Dawid told us that we all would be assigned new duties because our numbers have grown substantially. Then he brought in some of the people who had been traveling with him. He said that most of his people could pitch their tents outside this building since all the apartments, or what we had turned into apartments, were full. But he said that we were going to have to open our apartments up for some of the elderly and some of his soldiers. He framed it like that for the people. But I know what he was really doing. He was putting spies in every apartment. Smart. If I was invading, I would do the same thing. I waited for him to assign someone to my apartment so that I could squash that. I lived alone. I didn't do roommates. But he never did. So, eventually, I ended up making my way back up to the top floor, all of which I had turned into a personal loft for myself. I fell into my bed, where I slept until the sound of somebody biting into an apple woke me. Before I could come completely awake, I had my knife from underneath my pillow coming into a sitting position pointed at the brown-haired man that stood over my bed, eating an apple. Dawid, I croaked, coming all the way awake. He smiled down at me as his powerful cheeks moved as he chewed. Don't shoot, killer, he said around a mouthful of apples. Why are you up here? This is my space. He opened his arms. Well, I figured, since I'm the new master, I should be staying up here in the master's quarters. I was going to shoot him. I warned myself because if I shot him, then my chances at freedom would be shot. But he was talking nonsense. I looked at him. Look, you can't stay here, kid. Move around. She was magnificent. Sitting up in the bed, still dressed in that tank top that revealed just how supple her breasts are. Those cargo pants that hugged a pair of hips, and a butt that was driving me mad. She still had on her combat boots, her beautiful hair spilling wildly around her brown shoulders. And she sat there, pointing her gun at me, aimed at my head with a steady hand, ready to shoot. I was impressed. I believe your loft had been searched for weapons and such. How did that little beauty get past us? I asked, taking another bite out of my apple. I must have forgotten to mention it, she said. So, what are you doing here? She frowned up at me. You didn't think I was going to let you stay up here in this big old place by your lonesome, you being the most dangerous person here? She chuckled before lowering her pistol. Look, her voice was husky with sleep. I'm rooting for you. I am. Don't get it twisted. I want you to take control here. Well, that was a surprise. Why? I asked her. She rubbed her hand through her head, scratching as she yawned. Because I'm tired, young man, she told me, looking good enough to eat, even though she had just awakened. And I want out. I want to just get on my ride and leave. I don't want this responsibility anymore. I chuckled. Well, allow me to put your mind at rest about a couple things, just so you'll know how to proceed from this point on. One, just because you say things to me like kid and young man, it's not by any means going to keep me from what I am determined to get. Two, you belong to me, beauty, and you're not going anywhere. I looked up at him, trying to determine how serious he was. Do you think that you can hold me a prisoner? I asked him. He smiled, taking a big bite out of the apple that was now almost gone. I won't have to, he said. I narrowed my eyes at him. So, you think I'm going to willingly agree to what is it you're shooting for here again? I truly was confused. There were plenty of pretty young women down there who I was positive will fight over this man. For him to be up here harassing me. I want you, beauty. My mouth dropped. Why? He smiled. Because ever since I first touched you, smelled you, I have been consumed with thoughts of tasting you. I gasped. My breath just stalling in my throat. Damn it, why did he keep doing that? Saying inappropriate things and doing things, even the way he looked down at me where he stood in front of my bed. Damn it, his eyes lowered to my mouth, and he smiled a little. I see the thought of that appeals to you as well. No, it doesn't, I lied. He chuckled. Liar, he said. But there will be plenty of time for that. However, I came to bring you your duties. I shook my head. Yeah, I'm not taking on any extra duties. Sure you are. I told everybody last night that we all had to do a little more since our numbers have grown. I already do a lot. You don't know, you just got here. But sit a while, you'll see. Easy, baby. I know you do a lot around here. I know that the people depend on you for their livelihood. They depend on you to feed them, to keep them safe. But now that I'm here, that is no longer your job. It's mine. You have a new job. He spoke to me as if he was explaining something to a little child. And damn, I must be one because I think he had just said he was taking over my job, which meant I was that much closer to riding out in the sunset. What's my new job? I asked him. He opened up his arms again, now finished with his apple. Us, he smiled. Us? I asked, frowning. He nodded to the side of the bed. I turned, and standing there was a little brown-haired elf. She was beautiful. She stood there sucking on her thumb, her big bright eyes looking up at me with the most adorable look. Her brown hair surrounded her little beautiful head like a puff of smoke. She was gorgeous, the most beautiful baby I had ever seen. Deborah, may I introduce you to Yafa? Yafa and her father are now your responsibility.